But anyhow, we'll start. Let's do this for the pure motivation of leading all limitless Mother and Father sentient beings to the ultimate. So the teaching today is on the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas, which was written by great master Gyaltse Togme Zangpo, who lived from 1295 to 1369. So it was probably written close to 1350, more, little more, little less, something like that. And I received this teaching in detail from Tsultrim many years ago. And basically, if you're going to be a bodhisattva and come back life after life after life, it won't always be like it is right now. There will be times when there will be tyrant kings, or there will be times when there will be war, or there might be times when somebody wants to kill you or even succeeds in killing you, or steals from you. There'll be times when people slander you, and all sorts of things. And so the 37 practices are, how do you negotiate through all of that? Basically, how to live in this world in the face of all kinds of difficulties. So how to do that as a bodhisattva and be able to maintain your calmness and your compassion and things like that. Now, these 37 practices, when I received it from Siddhi Rinpoche, he said very clearly that these are not 37 commandments, that it's highly unlikely that any of us will be able to live up to very many of these right now. But these are pointing to the ideals that we should be aiming for. And so the real teaching of the 37 practices is that supposing somebody hits you, and normally you would hit them back and maybe even kill them. Well, if you can just hit them not so hard, that's an improvement. And if you can maybe just slap them a little, that's even better. And so the idea is to look at these practices, see where you are, and then try to gradually make some improvements in the direction of these teachings. So, having said that, I'll start the text. There's 2 paragraphs of introduction. Homage to Lokeshwara, that means Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezi. I pay constant homage through my 3 doors to my supreme teacher and protector, Chenrezi. The 3 doors are body, speech, and mind, of course. Who, while seeing all phenomena, lacks coming and going, makes single. Who, while seeing all phenomena lack coming and going, makes single-minded effort for the good of living beings. Perfect Buddhas, source of all well-being and happiness, arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings, and this depends on knowing the practices. So I will explain the practices of Bodhisattvas. Number 1, having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, here think and meditate unwaveringly day and night in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So I have found over the years that it's very difficult to convince anybody how rare and precious a human birth is, let alone how rare and precious a human birth when you can receive the Dharma and practice it, how rare those things are. And if you find yourself in the situation of having a human birth and having the ability to receive teaching and practice, then Gyaltse Togme Zangpo's advice is hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly night and day in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So once again, taking the gradual approach, that means if you're not practicing 25 hours a day right at the moment, whatever you are doing, add a little bit to it. And then that's following this teaching. My feeling, if you're living in the world in the West, a reasonable goal for most beings is 4 hours a day. I think somebody actually achieved that once, but that was by accident, I don't know how many of you come close to that. Basically, the first thing is to recognize the rareness of an opportunity to practice the Dharma, and then to take advantage of that by practicing more and more and more and more. I should mention that this teaching of Gyaltse Togme Zangpo was written in a cave, so he was practicing what he preached. Number 2, attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and what to discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So right away, we run into a little bit of language difficulty. Give up your homeland. Doesn't mean you all have to move to the US. A better translation for it would be to give up your home base. And your home base is basically your ordinary mind with your identification with the self, and with the possibility of all of the defilements coming and going. And so he's basically saying that from beginningless time, we have a home base or a comfort. I like to call it a comfort zone where we like to be. We've all seen that sometimes in meditation you can start to move to a very undefined existence. Time might stop. All kinds of things might happen. And when that happens, most of us get uncomfortable. And then we generate some negativity to get back to our comfort zone. So the first part of it, attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. If any of you have ever been a parent, then you know exactly what he's talking about. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and what to discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. If you give up your home base, you start to move toward what Trungpa calls the luminosity, where things become more undefined. There are no boundaries. Things don't have names. And in that state, you won't be stirred up like water. You won't hate your enemies. You won't burn like fire. So give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. It can also have the literal meaning of giving up your homeland. For example, when Shakyamuni Buddha left home, he left the land that he lived in, which was ruled by his father. And India at that time was many little kingdoms, and he moved to another one. And that's where he practiced and attained enlightenment. Number 3, by avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So for those of us living in the world in the West, in this day and age, seclusion is some degree of detachment from everything that's going on around us. We're flooded by news and music and movies and television and books and every kind of thing. And if you get involved in them, then disturbing emotions are very often aroused. When I was a child, we used to go to the movies every Saturday afternoon, and it was always a Western. And in the Western movie, they would manipulate the audience so that when the bad guy was killed at the end, you would feel really good about it. You're really happy that he died. He deserved to die. That's engaging in a bad object, and the result is disturbing emotions. Those are not wholesome emotions. And very often in movies and television, these days they like to push the envelope, they call it, which means to show you more and more what would be a word? More and more extreme bad things that result in more and more extreme disturbing emotions. So what he says here is it's by avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. In other words, if you create some detachment to the world around you and to things going on around you, and then you live as well as you can without distractions, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. So when you meditate and attain clarity of mind, then you develop a degree of certainty about the teachings and the value of the teachings and the correctness of the teachings. Cultivate seclusion, cultivate detachment from things around you. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. In the extreme, cultivate seclusion might be to go live in a cave in the Himalayas, but none of us are really ready for that. To successfully live and practice in a cave in the Himalayas, you have to leave the world behind when you go to the cave. And most people who go practice in a cave in the Himalayas bring the world with them in their mind. And so their body is in a cave, but their mind is in a city somewhere. And that's not what's meant. You can cultivate seclusion, whether you're living in the world or whether you're going into actual seclusion. And we can practice that by doing retreats and things like that, where we, during a retreat, we generally cut off our contact with the outside world, and then living in that state without distractions, we see the value of that. So this teaching, number 3, is to recommend that you gradually decrease your attachment to things in the world around you, and to gradually cut back on distractions, and then the result of that will be virtuous activities naturally increase, and the result of your practice will be clarity of mind, which results in conviction in the teachings. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Any questions up to now? Number 4, loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. You can live in the world in 2 ways. One is to be attached to your loved ones, be attached to your possessions, and ignore the fact that death will come, and your consciousness will leave the body and leave all that behind. And if you are still hanging on to your attachments, you will suffer as a result. Or you can live the exact same life, but maintain increasingly more awareness of the temporary nature of loved ones, of possessions, of everything around you, and you can gradually let go of that. And as he says, let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Number 5, when you keep their company, your 3 poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline, and they make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So, since I have been teaching, one of the common questions that I get from Dharma practitioners is that they have an old friend that they really like, but as they've been practicing the Dharma, they increasingly perceive this old friend as a very negative influence, and they don't know what to do about it. So there are a lot of people in the world who are very committed to negativity, And conversation consists of criticizing whoever and whatever is not there. And when you have people like that in your life, it's very easy to lose track of your Dharma life. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline. Hearing, thinking, and meditating is a Tibetan phrase for hearing and practicing the Dharma. And they make you lose your love and compassion. The other day when I was having a meal, I could accidentally overhear a conversation from a few tables away. And this one person was very negatively pointing out something that he had come across in the news. And it struck me that it would be very difficult to be a part of that conversation and not have some negativity arise in oneself. The Buddha was asked once something about something like this, and he said, if you can find a compatible, like-minded person to walk the path with, that's best. But if you can't, walk it alone. So if you can find good friends who are not severely committed to negativity and who can be supportive of your walking the path, that's wonderful. But as we go along more and more, we need to give up some of those friendships that are just too negative and too harmful, and devote ourselves instead to hearing, thinking, and meditating, and maintaining our love and compassion. So as he says, give up bad friends. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. I'm sure none of you have bad friends. Number 6, when you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish your spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So he wasn't talking about me, he was talking about people like the Buddha and Namdak Rinpoche and all of these great masters that we've had over time. And there are always some people in the West who have too much of an attachment to equality, everybody's equal, and they have difficulty putting a teacher above them and relating to them in the manner described here. But we should realize that if it were not for these enlightened great masters who are making themselves available to help us, it would be virtually impossible to make very much meaningful spiritual practice. If you study religion in general, you will notice that in most religions, after some amount of time, it's very hard to find great spiritual teachers. as the religion gradually declines and it gets more and more corrupted. And that has happened frequently in Buddhism, in countries like Thailand, and especially Sri Lanka. They lost their fully enlightened beings quite a long time ago, and they've been trying to regenerate the Dharma so that there are great spiritual teachers available, but it's a very hard thing to do. In Tibetan Buddhism, Buddhism has declined frequently, but then due to the reincarnation of enlightened beings, they have reformed and revised and revitalized the teaching many times. And they'll probably have to keep doing that over and over because things decline. But right now, there are wonderful spiritual teachers. We can rely on them. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end. It takes a couple of days, doesn't happen immediately. And your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish your spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Any questions up to now?
I have a question related to the last call that we were on Thursday, and we don't need to make a whole meal out of it if there isn't a whole meal here, but regarding the Bodhisattva vows and Mahamudra, are they compatible?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely, totally.
Can you make a meal out of that and explain?
Uh, Mahamudra is a sort of a practice, um, and I say sort of a practice because it really is the practice of doing nothing. But when you successfully do nothing, practicing Mahamudra for long enough, you attain full realization. And then you're able to be an incredibly good bodhisattva and to come back and help beings over and over and over. Also, um, the bodhisattva vow, um, I had a very peculiar experience in this life. Um, when I was first doing Vipassana in Thailand and meditating all day, every day for a long period of time, I noticed an energy deep in my being, but I couldn't access it and I didn't know what it was. And about 30 years later, in the late 1990s, that energy became accessible. And when I looked at it, it was the desire to awaken in order to help all other beings awaken. And at the time, I was very sick. I wasn't able to meditate. And so I thought this was sort of a joke or some sort of ego trip. But I was able to discuss it with Siddhi Rinpoche. He confirmed it. And what it really was that energy that I couldn't access was the bodhisattva vow that I had taken in a previous lifetime. And the energy was still there. So if you take the bodhisattva vow properly, that energy will be present in you. That vow will be present in you in future lives, and will manifest. And whether you're doing Mahamudra or some other practice, it will be there. And Mahamudra is just a way of reaching a point where you can actualize the Bodhisattva vow more quickly. Normally to attain full Buddhahood takes many, many lives and a long time. But with Mahamudra, you might be able to do it in one lifetime. But you won't do it in one lifetime by doing an hour a day. They don't hand it out that cheaply. Sidney Rinpoche used to tell his students regularly that they should be realistic about what it takes to attain Buddhahood. And he said, in this life, it takes 30 years of all day, every day practice, sort of as a minimum. But that's full Buddhahood, we don't need full Buddhahood. We can get by with a little bit of it, for now. Get more later when it goes on sale. I hope that helped.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Yes, Jim has a question here.
Yeah.
Lama, I mean, in our sort of society, there's a sort of, I guess, paradigm of helping people that is sort of like built around activism. But I mean, secluding yourself in a cave in the Himalayas and meditating all day, you sort of seems to like distance you from people and situations in which you could help. I'm not quite sort of understanding how that works. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah. So I've mentioned many times before, energy between our surroundings and ourselves is a two-way street. So if you go for a walk in the park and you're in a very negative mood, you sort of poison the atmosphere around you as you walk through that park. And it affects all the plants and animals that are in that area and any people you run into. Similarly, if you go for the same walk through the park in a very positive state, that has a very beneficial effect on everything around you. And these things are generally not easy to perceive. So we don't focus on them very much. We don't know about them very much. But we've all had the experience of being in a room when somebody comes in a very negative state and the mood in the room goes down. And we've probably all had the experience of being in a room with a bunch of people when somebody comes in a very positive state and lifts everybody in the room up. So we can sort of see the truth of that. So if you have somebody living in the world who has not purified their mind of hatred and anger and greed and all of those things, and that person goes and lives in a cave in the Himalayas, they are benefiting people by not being in the society that they left, sometimes that's the best we can do if we're so stuck in our negative patterns and that we're harming everyone we meet and everything we come in contact with. Then maybe going in seclusion in a retreat or a cave or something like that is a little bit of benefit. But benefiting beings really depends on how much you have purified your mind and how much insight you have developed. And so the idea of helping beings when you're completely wrapped up in hatred and anger and greed and all of those things, there's really not much you can do to help. It's quite likely that your negative inclinations are going to pop up regularly and create a bit of harm for yourself and others. So, yeah, so maybe we should all live in a cave in Himalayas, and then there would be peace in the world everywhere, you know.
Hello, Lama. We're going to move inside. It's starting to rain here.
Oh, yeah.
But the reason we're down on the dock is the bandwidth is better. So we're hoping to stay tuned, but we'll just be about 30 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, or maybe not. Oh, okay. Lama, Graham has a question.
Hi, Lama. So, to what degree, let's say your attainments in a past life, you attain, I don't know, almost Buddhahood or whatever, and you take rebirth as a bodhisattva, to what degree so some of those attainments carry over innately to you? Let's say you just weren't found, weren't trained at all and encountered Buddhism later in life. Would some of those attainments carry forward, or do you completely start over if you're not trained early?
Yeah, that's a more complicated question than you might think. But Namjo Rinpoche once said, you never lose anything. If you attain something, you never lose that. And that's generally true. But reincarnates who have significant attainment in the past come in two varieties. Those that have to re-accomplish what they accomplished before, and those who don't. So Padmasambhava was an example of someone who didn't have to reattain anything. He was born, and he seemed to have full Buddhahood all the time. And in fact, he was advised by one of his teachers, or he's advised by somebody, I don't know if it was a teacher, to go and get a teacher because otherwise people might think he was some sort of a wizard or something like that, or something negative. So he had to go get a teacher and, you know, be a disciple and do the practice and all of that. But he didn't need to reattain it. I don't know all the details about Namjo Rinpoche, but I do know that from my own experience of him, he kept reattaining things throughout his life until he reached full Buddhahood toward the end, or later on. I don't know exactly when. And he once told me about regaining his full enlightenment in England. He described that experience to me once. But a lot of people have to reattain it. Some don't. The Karmapas generally don't have to reattain it. Probably the Dalai Lama didn't have to reattain it, but a lot of tulkus and so on do have to reattain it. And so, but the point is, it's not lost. It's there somewhere, and it will manifest at some point. And not every life is conducive for reattaining whatever you attained before, because you might not get opportunity to have teaching and practice and things like that. You know. Ali.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. The rain's getting serious now, so we're headed up.
Okay.
Sometimes you hear about, you know, when you when you find a good teacher, stay within 8 feet of them. And I've had some mixed thought processes or experiences on that, because sometimes, like, it's very obvious to me when being in the presence of, I'll just say, practice, a practiced person,
Yeah.
that it very clearly impacts me and benefits me. But then well, I sometimes ask myself, well, what is the point if I'm relying on other people's practice for my benefit if I can't cultivate that on my own? But equally, obviously, being in the presence of other practitioners is beneficial to my practice. Um, but could you speak to, like, I've kind of been like, I don't want to use the word addictive, but it can feel pretty nice to be around people who have spent a lot of time practicing, and it can be easy to not want to do much else. But then you have, like, responsibilities and things. Do you have any comments on kind of that theme? Um, and, personal, like the pursuit of full enlightenment, and, when you're in a cave for 20 years, you're not in the presence of other practitioners, you're with yourself. But I'm not in a cave.
Well, what happens is there are ideals like, being within 8 feet of a teacher all the time. And there are the limitations of particular lives. So right at the moment, it's not possible for you to be within 8 feet of a teacher all the time due to circumstances. But being in the presence of a teacher um, does gradually change you in a beneficial way. And it's very, very, very valuable to do that. So what we should do is, when the opportunity presents to us to be in the presence of a teacher, we should notice that presence, and we should get whatever we can out of it. But it isn't gonna um, work right now for most of us to be in the presence of a teacher all the time. I can't do it. Sidney Rinpoche one time invited me to live at Cherublain, and I probably could have been within 80 feet of him, not 8 feet, but 80 feet, but I wasn't able to do that at the time. But as the great master here says, when you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. That's what happens when you spend time in the presence of a master. People think that they should be able to practice and attain these things on their own, but that really doesn't work very well. There are only a few practices in the world, one of which is Anapanasati, where you can get by without a teacher. But what happens in Dharma as we walk the path is that almost everything is counterintuitive. For example, I was with Osho once, and somebody was having a lot of fear, and they asked the question, how can I get rid of this fear? And Osho's answer, get rid of it. Why on earth would you want to get rid of it? That's what we need a teacher for, because intuitively we know that fear is a problem and we would be better off without it. But the way to get to be without it is not by somehow fixing it or changing it or dealing with it or something like that. The way to get beyond it is to go into it and let it be there, and not try to fix it. So when somebody attains full enlightenment, it's a combination of the effort that they made and all the grace that they received by being in the presence of teachers and receiving teaching over many lifetimes usually. So don't think of it as you're on the path alone. That approach is not going to work. It's a group effort. That's why in the three jewels we have the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Sangha in that context is the enlightened disciples of the Buddha, and they're a complete and necessary part of your progress. Then finally, and this is a very subtle point, but someone who has a genuine connection with the teacher, who sits in a cave alone in the Himalayas, that teacher is with them. You know, there's the famous story, I think it was a Sangha or somebody with a similar name. He decided to make future Buddha Maitreya his teacher. And so he went and sat in a cave in the Himalayas for 7 years and nothing. So he gave up and left. And then once he was out in the world, he saw something that made him realize he shouldn't give up so easy. So he went back and was in the cave for another 7 years, nothing. And then he left again, and he saw something again that caused him to think he was giving up too easily. So he went back and sat for another 7 years and nothing. So later on, he was walking through a town, and he saw a little dog that was covered with parasites or something. And he bent down and picked the dog up and nursed the dog back to health. And the dog turned into Maitreya. And rather than be grateful that Maitreya had finally shown up, instead he lashed out right away at Maitreya and said, I sat in that cave for 21 years and you never came. How come? And Maitreya said, I came the very first moment, and I was there with you every single moment of the whole 21 years, but you didn't perceive me. And so then they arranged a way that Maitreya would show him that fact. So Maitreya went back to being a little dog and said, put me on your left shoulder. And as you go through town, ask people, what do I have on my left shoulder? And so everybody he met said, oh, you poor man, you don't have anything on your left shoulder. No one could see the dog. And just as he was leaving town, he came across an old woman going the other way, and she said to him, why do you have a dog on your shoulder? And so she was able to perceive Maitreya as the dog, but not as Maitreya. whereas he had finally attained the ability to perceive Maitreya directly. The Karmapa, the current Karmapa, said very clearly about 15 years ago that if you live in the West, there's no need to go see him very often. If you have a connection with him, he will be there for you all the time. Okay, well,
I did want to mention something that I read from Gyampopa yesterday, which I think summarizes what you described now. Gyampopa was saying the reason you need the teacher there are three reasons. The first one is access to teaching and the scripture. The second one is the logic, which you mentioned, and the third one is simile, which you also.
it's what?
Simile. The simile, S-I-M-L-I, like an example.
Simile.
So, which you very well demonstrated all three right now. So I thought it was worthwhile mentioning.
Okay, can we go on? Number 7, bound himself in the jail of cyclic existence. What worldly God can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Refuge is occurs on several different levels. One is refuge in the actual Buddha, his teaching, and his enlightened disciples. But the Karmapa, I was with the Karmapa once in New York, and he explained quite clearly that refuge is really an internal phenomena where you take refuge in your own enlightened nature that you have not yet got in touch with, and with the truth represented by that, and with the manifestation of that. So, but anyhow, he's recommending that we take refuge, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Number 8, the subduer said, the unbearable suffering of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never do wrong. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So even Bodhisattvas have negativities arise in their life. For example, the Panchen Lama, when the Chinese came and took over Tibet in the 50s, the Panchen Lama didn't leave the country as so many of the other high masters did. And the Panchen Lama then disappeared from view. And most people think that he was taken to Beijing and sort of lived in a state of house arrest with his family. And the Chinese were said to be trying to control him because he's the only one who can name the next Dalai Lama, and they wanted a Dalai Lama of their own choosing so that they could control the people in Tibet easier. So, you know, that's a pretty serious life event to essentially be kidnapped by the authorities and and confined to your house for the rest of your life, and nobody knows whether he's still alive or not. So quite likely that had some sort of karmic origin. And so what Togme Jelse Zangpo is saying here is that we should work toward never doing anything wrong, to avoid those negative outcomes in future lives. And it's pretty obvious. A lot of people do negative actions without any thought to what the result of that action will be. So our job as would-be bodhisattvas is to gradually learn to do less and less wrong, less and less harm, less and less unskillful things, so that gradually over time we lose that load of negative karma that most beings carry. So I think we'll stop there for now. And if there's any and we'll carry on next time. And if there's any last comments or questions before we stop completely for the day, we have time for a little bit.
Yeah, I thought I just was reading Gampopo yesterday. I'm excited. I hope I'm not oversharing, but there was another comment about the three refuge that was I found very interesting. He was saying how the ultimate refuge is only the Buddha, which is the personification of Dhamma. Everything else, including the Sangha and the Dhamma, is the boat that needs to be cast away when you reach the other shore. So although they are refuge, but the ultimate refuge is only the Buddha. That was interesting.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Let's dedicate any merit up to now and from all sources and times to all beings, that each without exception attain the ultimate for themselves.